On today's episode, we're talking about Law & Order, Organized Crime, or as it's affectionately known, the OC. Christopher Meloni is back as Elliot Stabler, which might not mean a lot to you if you're not a big Law & Order SVU fan, but to SVU fans, it's 10 years in the making. And I know we're only covering Season 2, Episode 12, so we're not jumping in right at the pilot, but this show is different than all other Law & Order shows, in that it has a single storyline arc, and was that a surprise?
So I was still wondering, actually, by the end of this episode, if this was just, like, a two-parter, or if this, like, because I thought that every single Law & Order show, no matter what it was, always, you could just jump in at any point.
It's more like a 24-parter, because that's the season length. However, it covers the mystery that he's been tackling since Season 1, so it's kind of like Monk in that way. Well, specifically because you got the disposable woman concept behind this, where it's like, they kill off his wife, make him angry, and send him off on the case.
I think I watched the mid-season finale because I watched this on like NBC.com and it said that it's returning on like February 24th or something like that.
You watched Season 2, Episode 12 as Iago Is To Othello, which, do you want me to read the description for?
Yeah, please.
Stabler asks Bell to have his back when they're called in to defend their actions. I don't know what that means. Jet and Malachi work together to pin down Wheatley. Cho and Maldonado go undercover to watch Angela.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of names going around. A lot of familiar faces, right?
Yeah, in fact, I was surprised to see a lot of them. That's one of my pros. You get Dylan McDermott, except I think he's in the main cast, right?
He's Richard Wheatley.
He's the main antagonist.
He is the main antagonist. You may recognize him from American Horror Story, The Campaign, Hostages, and Clive Owen's long-lost twin.
Yeah, and have you made that joke before on this podcast? It feels like you have.
No, I think I've told it to you before. Another lookalike is Rosario Dawson's long-lost twin, Tamara Taylor.
Yeah, in fact, I was wondering if it was Rosario Dawson for like the longest time. But
it's the lady from Bones.
You also get James Cromwell. I think he was introduced this episode, which
James Cromwell's in this?
Yeah, he was like, it was really strange. He showed up for a couple scenes, and I was like, is that him? Because I had to make sure.
The old man from Babe.
Yeah. And the guy from Succession.
I didn't even have that written down here.
Yeah, I think he's introduced this episode. And then you have...
Is he a bad guy?
Yeah, that's the twist. Yeah, by the very end of the show, he is. But you're supposed to think he's like hitting on Stabler's mom for a majority of the episode.
Stabler's family is a big part of the show. I just didn't know his mom was in it. I know that they even pulled in people that were in the original 1999 cast as his family to play his family later on, but that may have just been his wife when they killed her off.
The only family I saw was his mom, obviously Elliot Stabler himself, and then his son, I think.
Yeah, were you able to figure out the gist of the show rather quickly, or did?
Even though it has an episode story arc, they give you a previously, and you can still kind of jump in at any point. Mm-hmm. But with the other person I want to mention that I was surprised to see in the show was Cephas Jones, the guy from This Is Us,
and he's playing like a congressman, right?
Yeah, I think a senator or something like that.
Kind of shady.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how many episodes he's been in, but I just saw him for a couple minutes in this.
And he's working with Wheatley, right?
Right, yeah, or I think Wheatley works for him. Wheatley just keeps on, like, getting people to work for him. Like, I believe in the prior episode, right before this, he breaks out someone named McLean, who is, like, this hacker, because if...
McLean is the hacker with a heart of gold.
Yeah, and he's gonna, like, I guess destabilize stocks and make the Dow go down, like, 1,000%, and because of that, somehow Wheatley's gonna be able to become, like, a billionaire off of it and get a ton of money.
Yeah, the previous episode's name was As Nottingham Was to Robin Hood.
So these are all, like, using really just...
The last two have been, as Iago Is To Othello.
But it's not like an ongoing thing.
That one, Nottingham and Robin Hood, obviously has to do with, like, theft of rich to the poor, right?
Right, and McLean reminds me of Robin Hood by something he does in this episode. It's actually my favorite part of it.
Yeah, McLean is played by Robin Lord Taylor, who played Penguin in Gotham. So he's familiar with New York, but it was nice for him to get back to it. That's what he said in an interview. He was also the roommate of Billy Eichner.
Wait, what? Really? So is he in, like, comedy, or is he just, like, a dramatic actor?
I think he just acts. They acted together? I don't know. But in case the intro didn't cover it, McLean's character in the previous episode tried to turn himself in, but then Wheatley intercepted him, brought him back to where he was, and kind of made him work for him.
Right, and
so he wants to do good.
They ended up missing him by, like, a couple seconds, because apparently McLean and Richard, they were both, like, getting a helicopter, and Stabler was about to catch them, but then they left. And
how old do you think Dylan McDermott is?
I'd say 50 maybe?
He's like 60.
60?
Yeah, and he plays a good villain. Like, not only was he the villain in this, but he was also the villain in that recent King Richard movie. And he reminds me a lot of, like, the Jason Isaac type character, where you cast him as the number 2, number 3 lead, and he plays, like, the good, sinister guy. or he has some comedy chops too.
Well, I was prepared.
Is he funny in this?
Unintentionally. So I was prepared to. I was like, oh, he's the villain. I can't wait to see what he does. And he plays the most cartoonish villain ever. In fact, I think the director got the performance that he wanted out of Dylan McDermott, but it just did not work in terms of the TV show. There are times where he brings a knife to like his ex-wife's throat, but then he starts like crying about how
Angela?
she's with another woman. Yeah, Angela. It's something that I guess you kind of have to watch to understand what I'm saying, because I didn't think that he pulled it off that well.
The thing that surprised me was that he's not in hiding. He seems to be one of those villains where he's doing everything underhanded enough where no one's able to actually throw dirt and have it stick to the guy.
I was perplexed by this episode because the previously made it seem like once Stabler's team was able to find out where he was, they were going to arrest him, and then that didn't end up happening because they end up like scoping him out.
They confronted each other multiple times. He thinks that Wheatley was in charge of his wife's death. Like, he just isn't able to pin the dude.
Right, but like they had nothing on him. Like there was multiple times in the episode where I was like, okay, now they're going to finally get to him and bring him in, and it was like, no, he just somehow like is able to either escape, but even when they find him, like they don't have anything to pin him with. So I was just confused.
Like the most fitting comparison I could think of was Daredevil and Kingpin to Daredevil, where Kingpin was basically able to go off and do whatever he wanted, and even when they did catch him, he was still able to manipulate the police, because this guy's able to manipulate a congressman, this Leon Kilbride guy, who you said was Ron Cephas Jones from Mr. Robot, and he's able to get like people in charge of the FBI to impersonate FBI people to bring in McClane and stuff. Like, he just sounds like he has so many attachments into the criminal organization.
He broke someone out of prison and they still were not able to bring him in.
Yeah, so that's cool, right? That's good writing.
I mean, I get, like, you have to see his performance.
Did you like the episode?
The episode was better than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting a lot of relationship talks and cringy scenes, and thankfully for like the first 30 minutes or so, I was like, oh, they're actually paying attention to the plot, and this seems like it's going in a couple interesting different ways.
So you're saying they were rid of the cliches? Because there's a lot of big Law and Order cliches. In fact, I have a couple of them here, and I just want to see if these follow.
Oh, yeah, well, I was going to say the first 30 minutes didn't have any of those cliches, and then by the very end, that's when you kind of get what I was
the Hollywood ending
the whole
almost?
time. A little bit, yeah, but they do end it off on a cliffhanger.
Okay, well, obviously, because the show has to continue in its mid-season finale, like you said.
Right.
Does it have the same theme song, though?
Yeah, but it's over-dramatized. I mean, like, it was so dramatized, I was like, this is almost cinematic how much they wanted to make it. Yeah, like, the high strings and everything, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so it's the same song, though. Do they have courtrooms shown?
I don't think in this episode, no.
Okay, so there's not that... And then, like,
They do start off with the these are real stories or whatever, and the narrator.
Were there any moments when they went, enhance the footage? Clear it up.
No, thankfully there was nothing like that, but there was a lot of jargon that I feel like with these shows, whenever they have to do something technical, they almost purposefully make the audience want to like zone out or not follow whatever they're able to say so that they can kind of get away with anything, because they're like, if we do this and this and this, and then it's just like after the third thing that they're explaining, I was just like, okay, you know what, do whatever.
And they do that in this episode? Or?
Yeah, this happens a lot in this episode.
Okay, and so he's not the highest one on the totem pole. You've got Elliot Stabler, and then his sergeant, Ayanna Bell, right?
Yeah.
And then Detective Jet, and then Detective Carlos, and then Lieutenant Bill Brewster, Detective Victoria Chow. It sounds like it's a big group of people. Are they all in one precinct? Is that how we see them?
Yeah, I mean, they're all like one team. Basically, Victoria is the technical person. She's the person who's usually giving the jargon. And there was this weird thing where at the very beginning of the episode, they start off at the warehouse that McClane and Richard left in the previous episode. And they were just kind of scoping it out, seeing what exactly was going on. And they were right next to a Cortex data center. And so they decided to investigate that. And Vicky goes along with Ayanna and Elliot. And when they are speaking to the people that run that place, one of the people says to Victoria, because she brings up 2008, in 2008 you were like 10, weren't you? Which kind of introspected on me a little bit, because I was 10 in 2008.
I think she actually was 10. I think her birthday is in 1998.
So she's 23.
It was either her or Jet. And then you also have any evil parents show up, any evil husbands, or spoiled kids, because those are big cliches in the Law & Order franchise.
You didn't have any evil like parents or anything like that.
All right, I wouldn't expect so. This feels more like a 24 season, specifically like season 5, when you have Tony Almeida's wife just explode in front of him or whatever, and they're like hunting down her killer. That sort of, is Elliot Stabler like unsettled, or is he like crazy?
Yeah, well, that's brought into attention this episode. One of the reasons why Ron Cephas Jones speaks with Ayanna, he kind of hijacks a dinner that she was supposed to have, is because he's like, look, in the end, you might have to end up taking Elliot's badge.
Yeah, so Wheatley is trying to manipulate her into... So that's what I'm seeing as the Iago in this, because I was going to ask, who is getting tricked? Because the whole point of Iago is that he's a jealous, manipulative antagonist, so I'm assuming that's Wheatley, and he's whispering into people's ears to try to get Elliot Stabler
and
out of
putting
the
his
force.
psyche, and putting his psyche kind of into question. And to be fair,
driving him insane.
Stabler is doing some strange things this episode to also try and get back at Wheatley himself.
That seems to be a character trait of Elliot Stabler's, especially now that it's been 10 years since he's been like a SVU cop.
Well, when did his wife die? Did his wife die like in the show, or was it before the show started?
It happened in the SVU episode that he did when he came back. And then they had a very nice reunion because he left sort of unceremoniously, as he would put it. And they had 10 years sort of to make this happen. And he wasn't ever sure that he was actually going to come back. But then Dick Wolf called him and he was like, hey, we want to do this show around you. And he was like, okay, well, I've done all this other stuff that I wanted to do. I got my pilot's license, so I'll finally come back. But I won't do the same type of show anymore. But they did have a really nice reunion episode with Mariska Hargitay from SVU, who kind of said that fans were the ones who were left in the lurch when Stabler left, and so they really had to be careful about how they had this like really nice scene where they kind of just like spat at each other and got mad and then got happy. And
well, this show was put into jeopardy, right? Like after the first season, it was unclear if it was going to even come back for a second season. Because I remember we were planning on doing this show like way earlier, but we weren't sure if we weren't able to do it.
There's just such a rich history of Law and Order that I wasn't sure if we should just jump in at the pilot. It feels like then we would have had to have talked about all the other shows up until this one. This one, at least doing it in the mid-season finale of season 2, where it's made itself its own thing. We can talk about like Christopher Meloni's performance, and he's just a crazy looking dude now, like with that beard and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's one scene where I was laughing unintentionally because of how crazy he acts. So it's another scene where it's actually supposed to kind of be the big climactic battle. About 30 minutes into the episode, Elliot figures out where Richard is. He's in an elevator, and right as the elevator's door opens, like they start just going at it and punching each other. But
Dylan McDermott and Christopher Meloni
they
just keep punching each other in an elevator.
Yeah, and what happens is Elliot ends up pulling out like his ex-wife's underwear, Richard's ex-wife's underwear, and Angeline or whatever. Because
Angela's.
Angela's, because he made it seem like earlier on in the episode when Angela was going to meet him for a dinner, like that, and Richard ends up like stalking Angela, that Angela was cheating on him somewhat because she's his ex-wife with Elliot. So Elliot was trying to kind of play off that persona.
There is like a chemistry between Angela and Elliot that you're supposed to see.
Right.
On again, off again thing.
But Elliot was like playing off that persona, so he ended up asking someone to steal her underwear when like both of them were out, so that he like during this fight scene he pulls out the underwear and he's like, I had sex with your wife and we didn't even wait for a hotel room. We had sex in the restaurant bathroom. And it was just like the weirdest scene to see because like of the way that they were exchanging dialogue with one another as they were punching each other. It was
That's
kind of
a long
off-putting.
elevator ride.
Yeah, and like they're both bloody in the end, but again, he pulls out underwear out of nowhere and starts like almost bragging about it as both of them are just bludgeoning each other.
Is he using it as like a handkerchief or something? Like why would that's a weird thing to keep. I mean, unless you're a perv. You did the same thing, the guy from You.
Oh.
Joe, when he didn't cheat on his neighbor, he picked up like some of the underwear and just like kept it. That's why he was keeping it in the box when different show. So after the elevator ride, though, is McClane successful in getting the money? Does, like, Wheatley get away with it, does it seem?
No, Wheatley is still out and completely good. And McClane, at this point, has, like, kind of he calls the team or whatever. He retracts his statement about him going in and like, turning himself in. He's like, you know what, I know I said that I would, but I'm kind of liking what I'm doing here. And this is probably my favorite part, because it did feel like McClane was Robin Hood in this instance, where he starts taking money out of his bag and starts giving it to random people in the New York Public Library.
It sounds like Jesse from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and he's like, He's like, I like what I'm doing here, and so it turns out that he's not going to turn himself in. At the very end of the episode, because throughout the whole episode, it's supposed to be, is his psyche okay? He goes to a therapist. The therapist asks him, are you obsessed? Like, do you know what obsession is? And then Elliot goes on this big monologue about how Richard is planning on taking down the entire stock market. In fact, we see, like, different scenes of him trying to do that with McClane.
He's doing a good job, because the market's pretty far down.
Right, and they say stuff in the episode that I was wondering wondering if it was true. Like, when McClane is speaking to Richard, he says, we're 7 milliseconds in front of the market. That's fast. We're a lifetime ahead. And I was wondering if that, I mean, I understand that.
I think that's like a play on the 60 Minutes thing that came out, where it's like if you can get like a few milliseconds before trade happens or something. But if you, I don't even know how you could get 7 seconds ahead.
It's 7 milliseconds.
Oh, 7 milliseconds. Okay.
So I was like, I'm wondering if that's like actually true, because he refers to it as being a lifetime ahead.
You would need an extreme amount of computing power, like, to be able to do that. So
I mean, the guy is a hacker. Like, he broke him out of prison for that.
No, but not just the hacking, but like the energy involved. Like, that power, that warehouse must have a lot of power going to it.
Well, yeah, I think that like they're near the Cortex data center or whatever. But yeah,
are you trying to do that thing that you were talking about in the show, where you're just trying to zone people out?
What? No.
Yeah, they're near the Cortex, the mainframe of the data center.
but by the very end,
did you recognize Bill Brewster, by the way, Lieutenant Bill Brewster? Because you've seen him recently in United We Fall, but also in Weeds. Guillermo Diaz.
I'm not sure if he was in this episode.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I can't.
Because he would have been a familiar face.
I don't remember. I don't remember him in this episode. By the very end, Elliot is like, and you know, he's trying to take down the stock market. So in the end, if I can't take down Elliot, if you give me 2 days and I can't take him down, I'll turn in my badge and gun myself without any problem. Which felt more like a episode heading into the mid-season finale than actually a mid-season finale cliffhanger. But I mean, it does get people, I guess, to want to watch the next episode.
So without the Law and Order soundtrack, would you have been even able to tell that it was Law and Order?
I would. It probably
out of any other of those other, like Chicago PD or any of those.
Out of all those other ones, no, probably not. I wouldn't have been
FBI,
able. It wouldn't have been my first thing that maybe I would refer it to. But like in the end, it does feel kind of like that.
Okay.
Episode.
Did you give your rating already?
Yeah, like a 7.
A 7 out of 10. So you'd watch another episode. You're interested in where it goes.
No, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 through the lens of someone who's like seen different clips of Law and Order episodes, and also the fact that this does have an episode story arc, I think does benefit this show. But I wouldn't watch another episode like looking for it. Maybe skip through like the rest of the season to figure out what happens.
A lot has been made about the chemistry that Christopher Meloni originally had with Olivia Benson's character, Elliot Stabler and Olivia Benson in the SVU show. Does he seem to have that same chemistry with anyone in this new show, or is it kind of just him being a loner?
No, they focus on the loner angle. Like that's the whole entire point of his character.
Jack Bauer.
Ever since he lost his wife, he basically doesn't have that connection with anyone else. But I should also mention, because you were talking about earlier in the episode, one thing that ticks Elliot completely off, and one of the things that I think leads him to go. Is this
before he sees the shrink?
This is before the elevator fight scene.
Okay.
Is they're trying to figure out how they can take Wheatley down, and then someone's like, why don't we do a rainbow table? And a rainbow table is apparently where you take all the personal information on someone and see if there's any type of pattern that like happens, and they were wondering if that was a way that they could possibly take Wheatley down. But they needed to break in to like his financial records, and also...
So they need to dox him.
Yeah.
And then they need to kind of just...
Well, yeah, and
psychoanalyze
his phone and stuff, and they were like, well, what could the password possibly be? And the password ended up being the date that Elliot's wife died.
I don't know why people do that. I get the symbolism there, but I don't understand why so many people use their birthday. I get they're easy to remember, but I've never used my birthday for any password ever, and I never think I will, because it just doesn't seem like one that...
But it was just strange, the fact that like he was almost gloating about it through a password. It was almost like he wanted Elliot to know, and that's it.
Who figured it out? Him? Elliot?
No, it was Vicky again.
Oh, Vicky's like, maybe it's the day your wife died.
Well, what happened was like she broke in, and then one of the people was like, "How did you do it?" And then she like she didn't want to say it, but then she was like, "Yeah, I just put on the date that like your wife died," and he got really mad about it.
I wonder why. Just an offhanded note: do you know what they told Robin Lord Taylor as McClane what he was supposed to be playing as? He was supposed to be like Edward Snowden and Mr. Robot.
But those are both, like, good people, though.
Yeah, so he's ultimately supposed to be a good person, just working somewhat for the bad guys.
Yeah, and I mean, by the end of the episode, like, Dylan McDermott is about to kill McClane, but then his wife, like, kind of...
Dylan McDermott's gonna kill the only source of, like, the person who can hack?
Well, yeah, because he just gets really mad. That's one thing about the show is that like
he's like Stabler too, but he
right. It's the opposite side. I mean, it's obviously a foil, but it's like anything that Stabler does, probably Dylan McDermott's going to do the opposite.
I understand what you're saying.
So yeah.
So just to get the description out of the way again, Stabler asked Bell to have his back. So when Leon Kilbride, the congressman, goes to Bell and says, "Hey, Wheatley told me to, or he doesn't tell her that, but he's like, you should fire Stabler, and she instead...
No, it's more the fact that, like, Ayanna is deciding to help Stabler just, like, with trying to figure out exactly what Wheatley's doing and trying to get him under control.
He's been assigned to go to therapy so many times. Like, that was part of the way that they exited
in this show? Or,
in the SVU show, was that they had him, like, commit a murder or have to deal with, like, some sort of post-traumatic stress, and then, like, he ended up getting the option to either go to therapy or leave, and they just said that he left. so it's weird that he's now like so into it.
It's the same thing in this cliffhanger. Yeah,
he's Elliot Stabler.
And I was going to predict that by the end of season 2. I mean, I don't know how long in the future they're going to go into this show, but like I was predicting by the end of the finale, like he was going to probably like turn in his gun and his badge. So I mean that's what I thought was going to happen. But if they did that in the other show, maybe he does catch Dylan.
He never actually turns it in. Like you never see him do it. He just disappeared because his contract.
Oh yeah, so they just like
there was contract disputes. He wanted to do less episodes or have more money. They said no, and so he walked.
So it was just like one of the characters was like, oh, he's off doing something else.
No, more like they did this very sad scene where the boss told Olivia Benson's character that he had left, and she cried. That was about it. Okay. So that's why when he came back, it was so important for fan service to like give everybody what they wanted.
How is it doing? How is it doing? Like I know you said it's 7.7 on IMDb, but how is it like?
This season not as great as the first season, but the first season did do okay numbers.
Okay, yeah, with like the ratings and everything.
Yeah. So we'll see where it goes from here. They haven't renewed it for season 3 yet. But whenever they decide to cancel it, I assume at the end they'll write it where we get a conclusion. I don't think they'll leave you out on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, but
or they would like weave it into the SVU plot somehow again and then have
crossovers.
They've already had sort of crossovers before, so
he's come back and then like
that's how he was introduced. How they introduced this, and then I think Mariska Hargitay has come over to the OC at one point, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe she will eventually. Yeah. All right. So that'll be it for the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this review for this episode as Iago Is To Othello, Season 2, Episode 12. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.